Pick Six with Mully and Haugh starts now.
How did Marcus Stroman's Masterpiece Monday affect your feelings about the reeling Cubs, who were swept by the Reds and have been the worst team in the National League during the month of May?
It's a good question because it was a great performance and a wonderful moment, and maybe it was like the top game of the season because a guy won a game. And how did they score the run? It was a sacrifice, right? I mean, it's extraordinary that you beat that team 1-0, and it took a masterful performance by Stroman to do it. But I don't know. I mean, it's great that he can do that. It's great, and he's like I said earlier, he's worth the price of admission. The problem is, you tried to shake up the lineup and it didn't work. You tried to kind of wake up your team, and it really didn't work. His performance became like what overshadowed everything else. I got to be honest with you. I never thought that they would lose to the Reds, be swept by the Reds, and the way that they lost, what was the run differential? It was insane. I think the Cubs got some serious problems. It doesn't make a ton of sense. I understand that, like a Patrick Wisdom, the splits were awful. They were worried about, but good God, a guy actually hit a home run, and now he's sitting down. I don't know. I don't know, David. The Cubs are really having a terrible month.
Well, it was really enjoyable being outside yesterday, listening to Pat and Ron on the score. Zach, of course, part of that as well. Stroman was awesome. It was cool that there was a no-hitter most of the afternoon until Mr. Franco decided to ruin it in the top of the seventh inning. But the Cubs are just awful right now. I mean, Jameson Taillon is a complete disaster. Mully, you mentioned the run differential, outscored 25-10 to the Reds. It's just that Saturday night was a nationally televised game on top of it. Like, who wanted to see who decided to do that? That didn't make much sense. And then you wake up Monday, and you see that lineup, and you're like, why do I want Miles Mastrobuoni batting 5 times and batting leadoff for the Cubs? It made no sense at all. And Stroman completely,
Rossi said plate discipline.
Yeah, bailed out David Ross. I can't wait to hear David Ross on the score later today.
Yeah, me too, because those lineups tend to make you wonder what they're thinking and why they're being made out the way they are. A lot of questions about the lineups. Okay, so the Cubs, Marcus Stroman's masterpiece was just that, but it shouldn't distract everyone from what's going on, because you saw the reaction to it, and there's a fan base that adores Marcus Stroman and wants so badly for the Cubs to be good. They're not good right now, and I feel a little duped because after April, I thought they were headed that way. I want to know what's going on with Cody Bellinger. I want to know what's going on with the bullpen. I want to know what's going on with the plan. The plan seems like it's in place, but I think that we fell for it. I think that we started to think that the plan included maybe contending this year. Now look at them. They're among the worst teams in the National League. How did this happen so quickly? Everything is in disarray at Wrigley Field. Everything looks like it's a miss with the Cubs, even to the bobblehead mistake.
Oh my God.
You can't have that happen. It's
God.
a symptom of an organizational letdown, and we're going through it right now. So, yeah, I love the Stro Show. I love Marcus Stroman. To me, he's one of the most exciting baseball players in town. I have a Twitter poll asking that, so go on and weigh in. But I don't think it obscures us or should distract us from what's going on, which is this team is headed in the wrong direction, and I'm not sure why.
There's a lot of question marks within that.
What did you make of David Ross saying in the pregame he wanted to mix things up in the lineup to try to get the team going? Did Marcus Stroman's excellence bail him out in that regard, or did you appreciate the effort by the lineup? Was there any part of the experiment you found interesting?
Interesting is an interesting word. I think interesting is the word that people use when they don't want to be more critical or more damning. Because when I first saw the lineup, it wasn't interesting that came to mind. It was nonsensical, illogical, dumb. I don't know why Mastrobuoni was where he was. It was yesterday that he led off, right? Wasn't he in the leadoff spot yesterday? I understand Dansby Swanson batting fifth. I like Dansby Swanson somewhere in a run-producing role, but I just don't know if you looked at the entirety of that lineup and you thought that, oh, well, now I get it. Now this is going to snap him out of it. Marcus Stroman did kind of bail him out. Marcus Stroman did what he was paid to do. But having a lineup that did not include Patrick Wisdom initially made me wonder why. In Rios, you need to get him at bats more than 22. Okay, I understand the logic, but why? What's Edwin Rios done to deserve a spot in the lineup on Memorial Day? I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason. I guess this was one of those things where change for the sake of change. It worked for a day, or did it? Because they only scored one run. So let's hope they go back to the basics. I think it underscores how badly they either miss Cody Bellinger or a major run producer in the middle of that lineup.
Well, and again, Dansby Swanson has been playing spectacular defense. There's no doubt about that. But they moved him down to 5. And what does that say when he gets moved from 2nd to 5th? Now, apparently it was, more runners potentially could be on base. So then that gives Swanson the opportunity to drive somebody in. But that also means that he's not going to bat. The 5th hitter doesn't bat 5 times. I just don't understand. You can't sell me on Miles Mastroboni leading off, and then you move Nico down to 2nd. Well, why would you take Horner out of 1? Like, that's where he's at. That's where he's comfortable. The whole thing is absolutely maddening. And yes, Marcus Stroman bailed out David Ross yesterday.
Oh, there is no shadow of a doubt that Stroman carried everybody on his shoulders and got them a victory. I mean, he was fantastic. And, Rossi's attempt to shake up the lineup, maybe he thought he was sending a message to some people. I don't know. I thought that the Dansby Swanson thing was the only interesting part of it. And by interesting, I mean you're so desperate for run production that you're taking, one of your best players who you want to have at bat 5 times a game, and you're moving him down because someone has to knock someone in.
Yeah.
The problem is you're not getting on base anyway now. They gotta produce more runs, and maybe he can do it lower in the lineup. But I don't know how to feel about that expression. The rest of it was so weird. Plate discipline is what he said about Tauschman and
Rios.
Yes. And
where's Morel?
Rios was supposed to be providing power, right? Didn't he say that? I mean, it was super weird. It was just, and again, I think he was trying to send a message and to, say it's not good enough and it's got to get better and everybody's going to get, You
had 4 guys batting
shock.
lower than 200, below 200
I know.
in the lineup.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yes.
That's again, I understand people need a day off. I understand it's going to be hot in Chicago the next, week to 10 days. I get all that. But on the same day?
Yeah, it was weird.
Wow, that's a good question.
That's the voice of John Heyman. He's here with us at 7 a.m. Can you believe the Cubs, with just 23 wins, are tied with the Nationals for the fewest in the National League? Only the Sox, the Royals, and the Athletics have fewer in the American League. But the Cubs haven't been in that company until recently.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, the Cody Bellinger thing is very interesting to me because they did not put him immediately on the injured list. They waited 4 or 5 days to see if he was going to recover. And you can do that. You can put him on and you can, make it retroactive to whatever date it was that he went on it. But the fact that he's not back and the fact that as you watch that in real time, it was like, oh no, like he's injured his knee. And then they said, oh no, he's totally fine. And now all of a sudden the guy is nowhere to be found. It's bizarre to me that he was that injured and you thought you were going to kind of play it off. And I wouldn't mind, and I don't care. Only they did the same thing with Nico Horner. So it's just kind of like, what is, like, is that supposed to change the mentality? And I get it. The retroactive thing is important. But I think the Cubs, they've hit like this really bad patch. And as you say, the games are getting worse. I was hoping that these teams would tread water until they got healthy. and we saw the Sox completely fall apart. And now the Cubs getting swept by the Reds is really bad. And they were in last place for a minute, and they managed to have the Stroh show, and that's the only thing that changed things.
Well, the Nationals had this kind of record the year they ended up winning the World's. Are we going to use that crutch, right?
Sure, sure. Why not?
I'm shocked. I really am. But there's a lot of teams. I mean, as bad as the Cubs have been playing, the leader of this bad division, the Brewers, have 28 whole wins. Okay, same thing with the Sox. So the leader of that division has 28 wins in the Twins.
Yep.
So as bad as they've all played, they're really not that far behind because the divisions are no damn good. The problem's going to be is that what is this team? So now the next mile marker is the 4th of July.
Yeah.
So at this point, we know that we have two teams that would be lucky to reach 500 at the end of the season.
Right.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Right, that's why I just said lucky, the key word.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the Cubs, there's some questions that they have to answer, and I think that it's been odd. Let's start with the Bellinger one. Carter Hawkins goes on MLB radio on Sunday and talks about him being out another 2 weeks. Right. Who saw that coming? I thought he was going to be back.
I kind of thought.
Well, you kind of
thought he was seriously hurt.
Based
when
on the
he
way
landed.
they were talking about it, you're not Cub management, are you?
I'm not.
Cub,
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying.
Eyeballing it. The guy's
we
knee
can all
buckle.
eyeball it, Mully, but
Right.
don't you agree that whether it was David Ross or whoever, Jed Hoyer, the fact that he's going to be out for a month, he's
crazy.
not running yet,
It's crazy.
Isn't that a surprise? What's going on? What happened? Is this the same injured? This is the same leg that he was injured last year with, and I don't know what to expect out of Cody Bellinger.
We talked about him being an MVP at
I
one
know.
point.
And when he stopped hitting, and maybe not that it's one guy, but certainly things started to go in the opposite direction.
No question.
And so being unable to address that and adequately, whether it's in terms of information or production, has been a bad problem. The bullpen isn't major league caliber. It isn't major league contending caliber. You're not going to contend with that bullpen. You need some moves. I don't know what you do.
Yeah.
Maybe you can trade for a piece, but you don't have a bullpen that is going to put you in contention. Your starting rotation, Jameson Tynes has got to be better. You can't be as wrong about him as you.
That's a Cub
have
record.
looked.
He's had 8 starts and they've lost every one.
He's got to be better. You have $68 million invested in him. You were wrong about Keegan Thompson and his development. Looks like you were wrong about Zach McKinstry because he's thriving in Detroit. We'll talk to Steve Stone about that later. You're making a lot of decisions that look a little bit more questionable now than they did at the beginning of the season when things were going pretty well.
So Rick Hahn,
Were you disappointed?
that's the question.
Ron from the South Side, great Sox caller. Were you disappointed here, Rick Hahn? Say he's disappointed in the White Sox erratic play, but Memorial Day remains too early to think about tearing down the roster, or does it?
Well, I was glad Rick Hahn addressed the media. I don't think that it was satisfying to hear what he had to say. I think what we heard was this is how it happens in an organization when the standards are lowered. Is that you start out in a disappointing way like the Sox did in April. Terrible start.
Yep.
And then you show modest improvement in May. Pretty good team in May. And then you start to justify what you are or what you think you're becoming. When in reality is that it lacks ambition to approach things that way. What are you going to be? What is your ceiling now? It's lowered. Now you're going to be the best team in a bad division. That's what you're aspiring to be. Well, at the beginning of the season, I thought you wanted to be one of the best teams in the American League. Shouldn't every team want you to be the best team in the American League? What about call me after the parade? What about multiple championships? If that's a standard, keep it the standard. What's happened is, and what we heard yesterday, was reinforcing this idea of lowering the standards, accepting mediocrity. They're mired in it, Rick. You're mired in mediocrity yet again, and that's even maybe an improvement. So what are you going to do to get out of it? I think they're buying themselves some time. Everybody kind of fears and maybe senses the inevitable. This is a team headed for a rebuild. It just looks that way. Despite what's, you can justify in the standings, it just looks like you don't have starting pitching depth. You don't have organizational stars in the minor leagues. You have a lot of things that you're just trying to piece together to get through the year.
Well, words like erratic and disappointed are not words you like to have associated with your team on Memorial Day. those aren't good. Those aren't good words to describe your team, and that's exactly what they are right now. Now, I'll agree, David. Yes, it was good to see Rick Hahn out there at 35th and Shields taking the questions. But on the day that Liam Hendriks was returning, it almost felt like it was a little easier to take those questions, right?
There
because
you
what Liam Hendriks went through,
story.
it's bigger. Yeah. It's bigger than wins and losses and erratic play and disappointment and hamstrings and shoulders and elbows being hurt and things like that. So they are, and Rick was also the one who also talked about the 4th of July as the next,
Yes.
let's all get back together in the Sox dugout before the game on the 4th of July, and we'll see where we're at.
David, you said that perfectly. You described the situation that they are in and the comments of Rick Hahn perfectly. I kudos to you, because that is exactly what's happened, and you've seen it and you've picked it apart. I invite Rick Hahn to come on the program. I would love to talk to Rick Hahn. I've been a Sox fan the majority of my life, frankly. I don't remember when I wasn't kind of following the White Sox. It is a childhood thing. And I would love to talk to Rick and just find out exactly, what he's saying and what he said yesterday, Dustin, when you talk about the 4th of July. He said, listen, I'm just interpreting it, we are in the worst division in baseball. There's nobody running away. All we got to do is buy time, and then we'll know whether we need to trade everyone. You better be working on who you're trading, because this team has shown no sign of life. When Tony was here, at least they were 500. That is a terrible thing to say. And no one wants to hear at some point we'll have all our players together. They've got a lot of problems. You come into a season and you don't have a right fielder and you don't have a second baseman and you're short in pitching, and the question about the catcher is still out there. Their problems haven't changed. They just thought that the new manager would add more energy and they'd be awake. Well, guess what? They are in trouble, and the standard, as David pointed out very well, has shifted. And now it's all about how crap is the division and can they be as bad as we are.
You have posed a question, Mully.
There is the voice of Steve Stone. He'll be here at 9. How good was it to see Liam Hendriks back on the White Sox? And what did you think of his wife, Christie's far-ranging media session, including calling her husband a goofy random man? Do you like the plan to not bring him back as a closer and build toward that?
Oh, it's a beautiful description of a person. I mean, and that's love, to call your mate that. Yeah. It is. It's a wonderful thing to say. And I really enjoyed her and all that she had to say. As I said earlier, I really wish they were in a position where his return mattered, where you felt like, listen, his return, bigger than baseball, it matters. I'm not saying it doesn't. I just wish that they had a hierarchy in the bullpen where he would fit in some way. You kind of need him desperately to bail you out. Joe Kelly had been unhittable, and then he blows a save the other day. So I think that all in all, when you look at where they're at, you're just shorthanded. You're missing the bullpen. You're missing an extra pitcher. You're just missing a lot. And I don't think this is a surprise. I don't think that when you sit back and having watched it, there's no point where I thought like, wow, this is worse than I thought. Even as it was happening, it was like, oh God, they're not going to win, are they? They're just going to keep losing. So, I'm delighted he's back. It's a pity he's not on a better team.
Well, I love the story, and it's great. You guys talked about it in the first segment of the show. You did a great job with it. But now I got to get into reality. I don't understand. Why would you put him in when they put him in? That doesn't make that was a high leverage situation. The game's far from over.
Yeah.
You're down a run.
Yeah.
You're into the heart of the Angels. Or I'm saying if you were trying to ease him in, which I would agree with, to be honest, I would. I think that.
Did you hear? I almost called the guy Ricky. Did you hear Pedro Grifol say he thought? You said something like hopefully the energy will raise him a tick or two.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
come on,
It's a
Dustin.
tough spot to be in, though. It's a tough to know when to use him. I didn't have a big problem with it.
Well, then use him at the end if it's available.
Right.
I mean, the bottom line is you needed to get him out there. I just felt like, we've argued, unfortunately, all year because the Cubs bullpen has been so awful about whether or not it's high leverage and when to use guys. Right. I just felt like I hope his mental state is okay.
Yeah.
Because I felt they put him in a spot that was not great for him. They didn't put him in a position to succeed, I don't feel.
I didn't have a big problem with where they used him. I thought it was great to see him on the mound in any situation, whether it was that one or I'm glad it wasn't in a safe situation. I'm glad they're smart enough to avoid that initially. It was great to see him back because of what it represented to him. This was the carrot that was dangling in front of him. I think this was the goal that he probably always had in mind. This is what pushed him through all those chemo treatments, and he wanted to be back. It was bigger than baseball. It represented what it did to him, but this was the goal. He needed this. The problem is that you wish the White Sox didn't need him as much as he needed them. And they are in a position where they probably do, because they are a bad team with a inconsistent bullpen, and he needs to be put in situations. Probably they don't have the luxury of putting him in situations wherever they want, Dustin, maybe because they feel like they're desperate, and this is a desperate team that he rejoins. So that's the reality of it, unfortunately, but it was great to see Liam Hendriks coming out onto the field with the crowd on its feet and the reception that he received. It was the highlight of the White Sox season.
And that's a pick six.
Oh boy, here we go. How did last night's Eastern Conference Finals game number 7 impact your feelings about the NBA Finals, which will tip off on the 1st of June, Thursday? What stands out most to you about last night's game?
I'm still going to go with the Nuggets. We'll talk about the reasons why as we move forward this week. I think the Heat, a testament to them. It's a testament to their will, perseverance, and just sheer desire. This is a great example of where effort and attitude can bring a professional sports team. They can bring them to the NBA Finals. The 8th seed, they were on the brink of elimination. They lost to the Hawks. They were trailing to the Bulls, and then they woke up. Jimmy Butler, you have to give him his credit. This is all about Eric Spoelstra. Whether guys were undrafted or not doesn't matter. They are Miami Heat players. They aren't role players. They're, as Jimmy Butler said, they're teammates, and they get the most out of them. What stands out about last night was that this was a difference between a team that is well coached and a team that isn't coached. The Heat beat the Celtics because of it.
At first, I didn't think I would like this matchup, but now I'm really into it, actually. I think the Heat are that try-hard type team that maybe the Bulls aren't as far away. If they could just find a guy to hit a 3. I mean, Jimmy Butler, you got to pay attention to him if you're a Chicago sports fan, right? Another one, we had the guys that got away conversation. Is he a guy that got away? David, right now I'd say, yeah, I'm with you on the Nuggets, but boy, playoff Jimmy's really hard to bet against playoff Jimmy. But the game just, Mully, you mentioned it brilliantly earlier. 0 for 10 from three-pointers. They lived and died with that three-point shot, and it doesn't make any sense in the world why they did that.
Yeah, I would say, and we'll get into this later, but I would say that one of the things that we're going to talk about Boston. We're going to get the coach fired, all that stuff, and what they did wrong. The Heat, utterly not intimidated. The Heat, how many games did they win in Boston? 3 in the series, something like that. It's crazy that they went into that building and were completely unfazed, and that makes me think that they could do some damage to Denver. I'm with you, David. I think the Denver Nuggets have the advantage, but we'll see, and we'll get to that later. But we got the extra point.